Malcolm, when you go into a home and you find one of these Federal Pacific Electric breakers, what do you recommend?
Well, as soon as I see the orange labeling on the Federal Pacific panel, I begin to explain that these are electric panels that are made by a panel manufacturer that's no longer in business, that has a reputation for contributing to the house fires, because the problem is the circuit breakers don't trip under load. And so with the circuit breaker wide open, the electrical circuit just heats up and can potentially set the house on fire.
And what can happen if it doesn't trip the way it was supposed to trip?
Usually the burning starts right by the circuit breaker. The wires that are near the circuit breaker begin to burn and smoke and melt,
and that's very bad.
That would be a bad thing.
That would be a very bad thing. So you consider these to be unsafe. If someone's buying a home or someone has one of these in their home, you're saying it's time to replace it, right?
I do. Of any of the panels ever manufactured, Federal Pacific is probably the least safe of all. There are other panel manufacturers that are not as safe also. It really has a lot to do with the age of the electrical system. Electric panels have about a useful life of about 50 years. These Federal Pacific panels were made in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So they're quite old as it is anyway, and at the end of their life, that's probably when they're the least safe.
So you don't recommend just trading things out with it, you recommend replacing the whole panel?
The panels are old, and the connections, the wire terminations, work loose in any panel. And so it's just good practice. Standard practice would be to let an electrician come and replace the entire system. In fact, you probably want to upgrade what you've got. Okay. You probably want more capacity. You probably want a larger panel. Electrical needs 50 years into the future are going to be probably a lot more than what we have today.
And some people have had these and they think, well, everything's okay, I've never had it flip off, but that's not a measure of whether something is working or
well,
not.
That's right. That's a common misconception. And when I get the seller down on a home inspection to talk about the Federal Pacific panel, the sellers often say, I never had a problem. Well, they never had a problem in that the circuit breakers never tripped. Well, that's the problem. You probably had a situation where you had an overload and didn't react. The circuit breaker didn't react and you didn't know. Mm-hmm. The Federal Pacifics are telltale, or the telltale is the bright orange